when do they vote or when do they finalise
Voting's
that?
done. This is the issue. I think that...
Oh, so they've already decided on a Coach of the Year.
And everything. All awards have already been decided.
Right. Okay. I was going to say Adam or the Taipans are playing.
And I think that's where the issue... the vote...
Because the top 3 is already announced, but you're saying they've already picked the winner.
The winner would have already been chosen.
Right.
So that's been the contentious one for debate currently, because the MVP's been everything's been voted on already from captains. So, and we can talk about the process soon, but captains and coaches have voted, but last week's games don't count to the end. And
it just doesn't make any sense.
No, it really doesn't.
How much lead up do you need to write it on a trophy?
Yeah, I'm unsure.
Because what happens, and this is just one, it's a hypothetical, so whatever, but if there's 2 guys that are neck and neck, and one guy in the last game of the season pulls his team through and wins it, and the other guy doesn't, then that's...
Well, I mean, and you're completely right, because I look at it, so say yeah, you're right, Sydney, if Cairns and New Zealand lose games this week and Sydney win out,
yeah,
Sydney will have a 4-game head-to-head, on that. That's a huge gap, and so
Coach of the Year, yeah.
But then you're completely right. Say Sydney lose both, whether they want to rest, 40 gets through, they get through, and you're that's one game, that's massive, and no doubt it's last week, and that was the argument because Bryce's game against Illawarra going for 40, and then Tassie backing up, didn't count, and everyone was up in arms. I'm yeah, absolutely, you could be up in arms, but then Xavier Cooks drops a triple-double in a win against another MVP candidate, and that doesn't go up, you know. And you're right, because Wildcats could, off this, let's say last week, and say they sneak into a 4 and Bryce goes back-to-back 50-point games and gets them into a 4th spot and guarantees a playoff spot. You'd be geez, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Or if a Mitch Creek or at that time, who I think, if they get bundled out of the playoffs and he doesn't, you go, well, he's not really an MVP candidate. So
yeah. It's the same with the Norm Smith voting in the AFL. It's halfway through the fourth quarter or something. It's
weird.
It doesn't why do they need the 40-minute head start?
I know. Even the Norm Smith's weird. I text you a message or just even write down about what's your vote.
So when I was at the Wildcats and you would get told, they give you a heads up if a player is going to be a finalist before they announce or whatever.
yeah.
And they give you a bit of lead time so that you can get your graphics done
of course.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It takes half a day to build some graphics and
mate, don't even
make a
more
highlights
than that.
video.
But if you knew that, you wouldn't how hard to prep it.
Well,
for
that's what I mean.
the winners announcement, you've got 3 finalists.
Why can't they do it the week of the awards and go, okay,
very good,
media team, make
very good thing to ask.
I don't know. Anyways, let's talk about a little bit about the process then of how that all happens. So yeah, like I mentioned before, you are on the panel of people who decide who is in the top 3. So a lot of people think that the panelists just decide on their best, maybe get around a table, go, yep, these are the best 3, and then that gets put forward. And then I don't know who picks the finalists. So who picks the finalist?
Yeah. So the panel, and from what I assume and looking at it, panelists are all across Australia, so there's not a Victorian centric you've got Joe Healy, Andrew Gaze, myself, John Casey. There was
Olden.
people. So there's everyone around in different parts. Now, we basically, and it was people that obviously watch the game. So they're people that are active on social media or watching games and have some knowledge and understanding. So with that, you literally had a list of players and there was criteria per category in terms of the defensive player or 6th man of the year. The only thing that was obviously significant was the 6th man of the year was the player had to have played 50% of games by the time that was decided, or even at the end of the season. By the time it was decided. And so I actually had a little bit of I had to bring that up because even the definition of 6th man of the year, I can say in a couple of cases, so 6th man of the year, I had Daniel Johnson. Now, no one would have considered him because he's been a starter, but then in the back end of the season, he's now 6th man of the year. Now, is his impact people? But I'm his numbers are crazy. From a 6th man of the year, sort of it is equivalent of Barry Brown, but we don't see him as a 6th man, and he wasn't in that quota. Same deal. Malcolm Lee was another guy, Melbourne import. like same deal. I was like the amount of gains, but then like he was on that cusp. So yeah, went back and forward. Obviously, the massive controversy is around Shea Ili and only playing 14 games. So we were asked to nominate every category. You had to nominate 5 players, bar the next generation player.
Right.
So you would nominate who you thought out of that. The MVP, you would nominate 15 players.
Yeah.
And now, once that was everyone was sent through and you like deliberated.
Did you like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 them or just?
Well, and this is the thing. Like I was like, oh, here's the players. Like, and I like naturally was like, well, obviously 6th man of the year. I'd think this is the guy. I'd think Barry Brown is going to win it. So naturally in my head, perfect. And like say most improved, I'm like, oh geez, like there's 3 guys that you're like no brainer, but then. Are you thinking Tanner Krebs, Jack McVeigh, like, you know, like all these guys whose numbers have gone up? How do you like, do you do that? They're not as clear. Now, I don't know whether, like, again, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't matter because it wasn't like if you were 1, it wasn't like you were going to be an automatic finalist.
Yep.
And understanding, like, if 3 or 4 are going to be standouts. So a nominee list was then made, and, like, I can't dispel how many people were done. But like in terms of like the issue where Shea Ili and Justin Simon, like I can guarantee you was on the nominee list. Like that's what I can say. So he was definitely acknowledged by the panel. Well, the one thing, and this is, and I'll accept total responsibility of this, because when I asked about the 6th man question, they answered straight away like, nah, this in the past has changed, whatever. From when I used to play, my understanding was, and this is obviously back in my era, so shows this, but teams would nominate players and then they would be chosen by the coaches or the captains, right?
Right.
Now, teams had the issue because they would only have 1 player per team. And so you could have multiple potential candidates. So, like, you know, we would have Damo and someone. I remember one year, can't remember who it was, but we're like, Damo's barely played games. Like, he's played 14 or 15 games.
Right.
But we might have a better chance of, I don't know who it is, right? So I'm just going to use JP Tokoto, right?
Big defensive beast.
Yeah, but we'll put him because he's played more games. Or we'll put Damo because we know he's going to, like, it's Damian Martin, like they're going to still not vote against him. So for my understanding, like what I had thought, and I was just like, you can't nominate 2 people for an award. So I can say this, I didn't nominate Justin Simon because I think Xavier Cooks is the better defensive player. I actually think he is the best defensive player in the league. Like if he won it, I'd be like, that's who I had. So he's not a finalist. And so now, like when we looked at it and there was like multiple, I was like, oh geez, I should have actually just emailed and said, oh, hey, can we have multiple?
From the same team.
Because I would have actually had it the same way as New Zealand. Like I would have had Brantley and Pardon. And Cooks and Simons, because I actually think like that. And I'll go and go, I have no issue as saying if we put 2, absolutely Justin Simons in there because he's a beast. But I think Xavier Cooks is actually a better defensive player than everyone because he can guard 5 to 1 and has shown that. Like he blocks Bryce Connor's shots, but then he intimidates.
Hold his own against the 5.
Tayshaun Thomas and so like he's like he's your anchor. So I think the issue, what everyone's like when I woke up in the morning and obviously Eastern Standard Time, so I'm like getting up and I'm like copying like abuse and like going like, oh, like show me your like vote.
Show me your vote.
And I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is the issue? And I'm like, mate, if you have any grievances, it's the coaches and captains now.
Yeah, so we didn't get to that part. So you list 5 players. Each person on the panel gives 5 player names, and then that goes into a big pool of people, and then now the coaches and
then that list of players, like whatever finalists is and done down, then is then given to the captains and coaches, and then they decide on they vote, and then whoever tallies up, then that 3 finalists. So. Of however many people were nominated for the defensive player, like in terms of that initial list that was given to coaches, captains, they've then trimmed it down to 3, and they've decided Shea Ili is good. And now I would say, like, absolutely. And this is where the voting thing comes from a game perspective, because even when I thought about, okay, do you put Shea Ili there? At that time when you're nominating, there's still 5 or 6 games left. No one expected him to have a concussion and then potentially miss another 5 games. So, like, off that, you're like, of the 14 games that he's now played and he's missed quite a bit. So he's played, I don't know, whatever. So if they still had 3 games left or 4 games left, they're like, their record is like 9-2 with Shea Ili, and it's purely because of defense.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
Hence why, like the coach and the captains, like I think they appreciate that. Their basketball, their knowledge is perfect,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, so
that's their job.